monsters ever die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.
Okay, everything seems to be working. On a quiet morning in 1926, Edgar Cayce lay motionless on a couch, his breathing shallow, his voice transformed into a cold, calm, otherworldly monotone, and despite family gathered around him as he described, in a perfect medical terminology he never studied, the exact internal infection killing their son. Even prescribing a treatment no local doctor had considered. When the boy recovered exactly as Cayce predicted, the family called it a miracle. Cayce called it just reading the record. Whether that meant the mind of God, the soul of the patient, or something far more ancient, he never fully explained. But one truth became possible to deny. When Edgar Cayce slept, something else woke. Tonight on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are discussing Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Yet another wonderful, wonderful week is upon us. Trying really hard not to peek this mic right now. Oh my gosh, I had so many audio issues the last 8 minutes before I was supposed to stream. That's why I'm just a couple minutes late tonight. Golly, I've never scrambled like that before. Absolutely ridiculous. Hello, friends. Welcome in. Welcome in. Tonight on Beyond the Shadows podcast, you heard me correctly. We are discussing Edgar Cayce. Whoa. I lost my, did I lose some information in the stream here? What's going on? Hold on. There we go. There it is. There it is. All right. I just got a little scared there for a second. I've had so many issues in the last less than 10 minutes. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. My dumbass had to decide to update my graphics card right before I started streaming, and you know what? That wasn't the best idea I've ever had. It really wasn't. It made things not so great. Yes. Back on task here. Season 2, episode 45, Beyond the Shadows podcast. Tonight we are discussing Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet. That's right, everybody. Let's get a little round of applause for Edgar Cayce. Just wait. You just wait until you see some of the things this man has done. Very bizarre story. Very bizarre story. We're looking at, in a nutshell, this guy's predicted more things than Nostradamus. But the crazy part is he accurately predicted these things. How that works, I don't know. We're going to discuss it, though. We're going to figure it out. I know that. Let me make sure we get all our windows open. Yeah, everything looks good. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you to Soya for the shout out on Twitch just a minute ago. If you're watching this, Soya, thank you so much. Appreciate that. My computer took a shit right in the middle of you talking, so I am sorry if I didn't respond. Sorry. Okay, we're back up and running. Everything's looking good. Before we move forward, I do have one small announcement. Next week, we will be live on Saturday. Not our normal Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am traveling out of town, and I will not be able to record the podcast live on Sunday, so we're doing it a day early. I will update the schedule on Twitch. I will make some posts on social media so everybody stays informed. We do have the holiday coming up, so shout out to everybody doing Turkey Day. Gobble gobble, motherfuckers. Updates aside, I do have one small update concerning last week. So we remembered last week we were talking about Polybius and how, viewing the game made things weird for people. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. Really interesting case. I don't know if I mindfucked myself or what, but last week, that night after recording the podcast, I had horrible nightmares. I don't know. Maybe it's a placebo effect. I'm not sure, but just wild, horrible nightmares. Crazy dreams. Absolutely crazy dreams. At first, I didn't think anything of it, but then the more I thought about it, I was watching that recreation of Polybius on this curved monitor, as one does, and I couldn't help but wonder, maybe there was a connection. And so Sunday night, bad dreams, horrible nightmares. Monday night, nightmares again. Tuesday night, they were a little less worse. By Wednesday, it was back to normal sleep. It was really weird. It's like it peaked at Sunday. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm overanalyzing things. Really hard to say. Very strange. Anywhoots, welcome everybody on Twitch. Welcome everybody on YouTube. Again, this week we are streaming live on Twitch and YouTube simultaneously. If you're watching, the chats for both will show up on the screen if everything is correct. We need to, hold on, we got to test the speech chat real quick.
I am testing these words.
That sounded good. We might actually turn it down just a tiny bit. A little loud. Cool. Everything's looking good. Y'all ready? We've got a little bit to get into. But before we dive into tonight's story, it's time for our weekly roundup of strange, unexplained, and downright unsettling. It's this week's news and paranormal, a quick look at the sightings, encounters, and anomalies making waves all around the world. Well, let's get into it. First off, Wisconsin UFO sighting. 2 factory workers in Oshkosh filmed a metallic disc-shaped object gliding beneath a commercial aircraft with no visible means of propulsion, sparking a major UFO debate. Fraser Coast lights in Australia. Residents in Queensland reported bright lights that hovered silently before vanishing instantly. Witnesses insisted the behavior didn't match drones, planes, or satellites. Alleged Skunk Works experimental craft leak. YouTuber Anderson Odison released footage of a sleek unknown aircraft allegedly tested at a classified U.S. aerospace site, prompting speculation about black budget technology. Next up is the Irish sky object. Sparks a frenzy. A bright object floated across Ireland, kicked up a wave of UFO calls before astronomers identified it as a Falcon 9 fuel dump reflecting sunlight, though many remain unconvinced. And in New York, a ghost sighting spike. New York ranked the 4th in the nation for reported hauntings, logging nearly 1,200 sightings this year alone. Investigators say historic buildings may play a role. And UFOs found in old photographs. Scientists analyzing decades-old photos uncovered structured, unidentified objects hidden in archival images, some predating modern aircrafts or satellites. And thousands of anomalies in 1950s images. An extensive review of mid-century photography revealed thousands of unexplained lights, shapes, and added weight to early UFO-era claims. A spike in aerial anomaly reports, including sightings near restricted military zones, is raising concerns among analysts about unidentified craft and potential foreign surveillance. And almost at the end here, a Hudson Valley spinning light. Residents across New York Hudson Valley witnessed a spinning, multicolored light that hovered before streaking away at a high speed. Videos have yet to have a definitive explanation. And lastly, America's Most Haunted States ranked. A nationwide survey shows stark differences in ghost reported density, with northeastern states dominating the upper tier. Researchers say the numbers align with regional folklore. And that wraps up this week's news and paranormal. As always, as these stories continue to develop, we'll bring you the latest updates right here next week. And now let's step back into the shadows and return to tonight's story. Ooh, perfect timing. Right at the end there. Oh, nope, it started over again. I didn't fade it out fast enough. Get out of here, audio clip. Get out of here. Well, all right, folks. There's our headlines for the night. So I was on a phone call with the Pentagon this week, and I was like, hey, what's really going on in Area 51, right? And they pushed the microphone receiver, or the phone receiver, really close to their face. And you know what they asked me? Do you know what they asked me? I know what they asked me. I'm going to tell you what they asked me. What shirt are you wearing today? All right, folks. Our fan favorite segment is back yet again for another week of What Shirt Are You Wearing Today? I don't know if y'all know about this or not. My wife and I came across this by total accident, and we are blatantly obsessed with it. It's this wonderful little page. Look them up on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're on social media. The company's called Sad Nuggy. Little bitty company out of Canada. And they make these wonderful little plushes for a big plush household here. Went to Five Below yesterday, which is this great store here in the States. Going through the t-shirt section, as one does, right? For the podcast. That's what I do. And first thing I noticed was a Sad Nuggy shirt. Check this out. Look at it. Trying, but trying. Sad Nuggy. There we go. The Sad Nuggy shirt. I'm very happy about this shirt. It's historically speaking, their products are very expensive, but we managed to find one for $5 each, and we're both tickled to death because of it. All right, that's enough piddly-piddling. Are y'all ready to get into the story of Edgar Cayce? Are y'all ready? Because I'm ready. Are you ready? Do you have your warm blanket? Do you have maybe your fur baby close to you? Maybe you're like me and you have a frosty beverage in your hand. Frosty beverages are delicious. Whatever the case, let's get into it. Tonight we're discussing Edgar Cayce. This is Season 2, Episode 45 of Beyond the Shadows podcast. Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet. Let's get started on Act 1. Oh, I feel a sneeze coming. Don't sneeze. Don't sneeze. Edgar Cayce entered the world on March 18th of 1877 in a small farmhouse outside of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, a rural stretch of land where religion shaped more than belief. It defined identity, morality, and the rules of survival. His parents, Leslie and Carrie Cayce, were originally members of a deeply Christian community. Nothing about the moment of his birth suggested the future that waited for him. No omen, no strange sign, just another child born into a family that valued hard work, humility, and unshakable authority of the Bible. But from the beginning, Edgar was not quite like other children. He was quiet, unusually so, but observant. His teacher would later say that he listened. Not only did he listen, but he listened harder than any student they had ever known, as if every word mattered. His family noticed something similar. Edgar did not merely hear things, he absorbed them. When he read, he remembered every detail. When someone explained a concept, he didn't need it repeated. And when adults whispered things they thought were private, Edgar seemed to know them anyway. That early sensitivity became even more unusual the day he claimed he could see things that were not there. And sometime around the age of 7, Edgar began speaking of luminous figures that appeared to him in moments of quiet. He described them with calm certainty of someone recalling something obvious, like the memory of a family dinner. To him, these figures were not frightening, they were comforting. Sometimes they appeared to him in white, sometimes they spoke without words, their meaning arriving in his mind fully formed. He knew better than to share this with the other children or strangers, and in a small religious community, claims like that could mark someone as troubled or possessed. But he trusted his mother, and when he told her, she quietly believed him. Carrie Cayce was the first person to consider the possibility that her son might genuinely be seeing something beyond ordinary perception. The figures were not the only strange phenomena. Edgar had dreams that came true, small things at first. The arrival of a visitor, the location of misplaced tools, a minor event that would occur the next day. No one made much of it. Such moments could be chalked up to intuition or coincidence. And Edgar himself didn't treat them as anything special. To him, this was just how his mind worked. But the real fracture point, the moment Edgar Cayce's life split from the normal path, came the day an accident changed him forever. When Edgar was still a young boy, he was struck in the head by a baseball during a game with friends. The injury wasn't catastrophic, but it was severe enough to leave him with lingering pain. Sorry, I had to move one of my windows. It was enough to leave him with lingering pain, dizziness, and strange fogginess that didn't fully lift. Edgar began having an intensified version of the visions he had had before, more vivid, more frequent, more intrusive. One vision in particular stuck with him, a figure bathed in warm white light, standing calmly at the foot of his bed. Edgar described the presence as an angel, though the entity never named itself. It didn't threaten, it didn't frighten, it simply said one thing.
Your life will be different. Pray. Help others.
No one else in the room saw or heard anything. Whether the injury unlocked something or merely amplified what was already there, it's impossible to know. But something did change inside of him. His memory became even more extraordinary. His empathy deepened. His internal conflict grew sharper. He wanted desperately to be a good Christian boy. He also couldn't ignore the fact that whatever was happening to him was well outside the boundaries of Christian doctrine. His father, a stern man with little patience for what he considered nonsense, pushed Edgar toward discipline and hard work. His mother encouraged prayer, humility, and silence about anything that might bring ridicule or condemnation. Edgar grew up sandwiched between two forces. His father's insistence on normalcy, and his mother's quiet, intrusive sense that her son was touched by something unusual. Nothing about this tension prepared them for what came next. Around the age of 10, Edgar struggled with spelling, grammar, and memorizing long lists of vocabulary. One evening, after hours of frustration, he asked his father for help. The elder Cayce, already irritated from a long day, scolded the boy sharply. Edgar, overwhelmed, retreated to his bedroom with the textbook and sat silently on the edge of his bed. This is where the story shifts from unusual to legendary. As the story is preserved in family accounts, Edgar placed the spelling book under his pillow, prayed for help, and fell asleep. The next morning, he could recite the entire section flawlessly. Not just the words, but the descriptions, examples, contextual details. He could also point to the exact page where each word appeared. He could do this with any school book. From that point on, if Edgar struggled to learn something, he slept on the book. To his family, it was both miraculous and unsettling. Carrie believed it was a gift. Leslie feared it was unnatural. But Edgar simply assumed it was strange but harmless ability. Something he didn't ask for, but greatly used to avoid his father's temper. This sleep learning would become a quiet precursor to something far more dramatic. The trance states that later defined his entire life. Growing up in the late 19th century in rural Kentucky meant that religion wasn't something you believed. It was the lens through which everything else was judged. Miracles were acceptable, but only if they aligned with biblical precedent. Anything outside those boundaries risked being labeled demonic, deceptive, or the work of spiritual forces. Edgar feared this possibility deeply. He loved the teachings of Jesus. He read the Bible constantly and earnestly. He attended church every week, and yet he felt torn between his faith and the things inside him that didn't fit comfortably within its doctrine. His early life became wow, that quickly I lost my spot. Wow, where'd it go? His early life became a negotiation. Hide divisions, pray for guidance, trust his mother's encouragement, and hope that God was behind what was happening to him. But the visions didn't stop. The dreams got stronger, and the sense that he was supposed to help others only grew with time. One night, Edgar dreamed of a family member who had been injured in an accident several miles away. In the dream, he saw the extent of the injury, the painful details of the recovery process. The next morning, they received the news. The accident had happened exactly as he saw it, at the exact time he dreamed it. But he told no one. By the time Edgar reached his late teens, he had developed into a quiet, earnest young man with a reputation for honesty and humility. He took work wherever he could find it, on farms, in nearby shops, and eventually at a photography studio, where he learned the basics of the trade. Photography fascinated him, a craft that captured what was real, solid, and visible, something without mystery. He hoped perhaps that a normal job with normal responsibilities would quiet the strangeness inside of him. But the visions persisted. Even if he ignored them, the dreams continued. Even if he didn't record them, and the feeling that he was supposed to help people somehow never really went away. This internal struggle played out quietly as Edgar entered adulthood. He attempted courtship with few local girls, attended community gatherings, and tried to participate in small town life. But witnesses described him as a man who seemed half present, always slightly elsewhere, in his own thoughts, as if listening to two voices at once. He remained grounded enough to fall genuinely in love, and he married Gertrude Evans, a woman whose steadiness, calm demeanor, and gentle skepticism would later become essential to Edgar's work and survival. Gertrude didn't believe in the psychic phenomena, but she believed in Edgar, a distinction that mattered no more than she ever realized. Add marriage, limited finances, and the pressure began to build. Edgar needed stability. He needed income. He needed to support his new wife, and nothing about his unusual inner life pointed toward a normal career. He tried to suppress everything strange about himself, but fate, or something resembling it, pushed back hard. That pressure became overwhelming when Edgar developed a sudden, inexplicable condition that threatened to destroy his ability to speak. And just as Edgar was settling into adult life, tragedy struck. He began losing his voice, slowly at first, a strain, a hoarseness, a whisper. Then suddenly he could barely speak above a faint rasp. Local doctors were baffled. They couldn't identify the cause. Some assumed it was psychological, perhaps stress-related. Others speculated about nerve damage or an infection, but no treatment worked. For a man whose job required speaking to customers, giving instructions, and conducting daily business, this was catastrophic. And for someone who relied on prayer and faith for guidance, it felt like a test or a punishment. Unable to speak, Edgar retreated into silence for months. This period became a breaking point. He would no longer hide in normalcy. He could no longer pretend to fit neatly into a world around him. Without a voice, he couldn't work. Without work, he couldn't support his wife. And with his condition worsening, Edgar quietly wondered if his life would collapse before it truly began. Then something happened that would change everything. Not just for Edgar Cayce, but for thousands of people who would later seek his help. He went to a man who practiced hypnosis. A traveling hypnotist passing through town heard that the young photographer who had lost his voice and offered for help. Edgar, skeptical but desperate, agreed to a session. Under hypnosis, something extraordinary occurred. Edgar spoke. His voice returned completely, smooth, strong, and clear, but only while he was in a deeply relaxed, altered state. When the session ended, his voice disappeared once again. The hypnotist continued working with him, fascinated, and during one session, Edgar began describing the cause of his own illness with striking medical accuracy. Anatomical terminology he had never studied, using descriptions he had never learned. He diagnosed himself and even prescribed a treatment. The hypnotist and a witness wrote down every word. Following the instructions from the trance reading, Edgar's condition improved. Slowly at first, then rapidly. Within weeks, his voice returned permanently, and this was the first official reading from a man who would become known as the Sleeping Prophet, and it launched Edgar Cayce into a new chapter of his life that he was absolutely unprepared for. News of the miracle reading spread quickly through the community. At first, Edgar resisted. He didn't want to perform readings. He didn't like the attention. He feared the spiritual implications, the judgment from the church, and possibility that he was meddling with something dangerous. But people were suffering, and Edgar had a deep, almost compulsive desire to help. Families came to him quietly, asking for insight into illness, injury, and conditions they didn't quite understand. Doctors, some skeptical but curious, sat in on sessions, and Edgar, despite his doubts, tried to offer what he could to help. Each time he entered the trance state, his voice changed, his manner changed, his vocabulary changed. He spoke with clarity on authority on topics far beyond his education. And when he woke up, he remembered nothing. What frightened Edgar most was not the reactions of others. It was the possibility that he was channeling something he didn't understand. Something that could be divine or deceptive or somewhere in between. But the results were undeniable. People got better. Not everyone, not every time, but enough to make Edgar question everything he believed about prayer, faith, and the boundaries between the physical and spiritual world. So by the end of Act 1's timelines, Edgar Cayce's life had already permanently been transformed. He had gone from a quiet boy with strange visions to a young man trying to build a life, to a reluctant healer channeling information he couldn't possibly know. The seeds of his future, the Akashic Records, the medical readings, the reincarnation stories, the Atlantis prophecies, get ready for that, were all present in his early period, but Edgar himself remained torn. Every reading deepened his internal conflict. Every healing he performed widened the gap between the life he wanted and the life he was being pulled toward. He knew he couldn't return to normal. He also knew the world wasn't ready for what he was becoming. And as Act 1 closes, the pressure is mounting. The demand for his help is increasing, and the forces pulling at Edgar's identity, spiritual, emotional, and supernatural, are just beginning to collide. Okay. We're looking at some heavy stuff out of the gate. So for those of you listening, I'm not sure how well versed a lot of people are on the story of Edgar Cayce, but this is, if you read the book, Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet, you will notice that what I just read is the first quarter of the book, but there is so much more that is left out. I will do my best to recount as much as I can. Canonically speaking, yes, the story of him sleeping on a book and memorizing the book is true as far as records go. There are more details into the story that aren't present here, that more things along the lines of, like, his dad was violent, lots of smacking, like the day that he slept on the book, his dad actually hit him with the book, and that's the big reason why he retreated into his bedroom. But there's more to the story about what he could do after sleeping on the book, all right? There's one down. Historically speaking, it was said that he could take a book. When he realized that he knew he could do this, he began to kind of test it out a little bit, you know what I mean? So what he would do is he would take a book that he had never read. One more sidebar to my sidebar here. Something that wasn't fully explained here is he did actually have, by the age of 10, he did have a learning disability. He could not read very well at all. He actually had a hard time reading, hard time understanding, and comprehension was a major issue for him. So the fact that he could take a book that he could barely read, sleep on it underneath his pillow, and then wake up and he would know the book is bizarre in itself. Because there's no way he could read the book, outright and understand it fully. So a lot of people said this was the first miracle in his life. Lots of talks about miracles with this guy. But historically speaking, when they started testing the ability, there was one instance where he was handed, I think it was Encyclopedia Britannica? What year did Britannica come out? I don't even know. (1768). Yeah, so this was around by then. So I believe the story goes that he had an Encyclopedia Britannica. His mother wanted to test this theory, right? So what she did was she took him into the other room and said, "Here, sleep on this one. We want to test this thing out, right?" So he went to sleep and he woke up and he said, "I know the book now." And this is where it gets crazy, right? His mom flips open the book, randomly selects a page, points to it, and says, heck, I don't know, page 214. Third paragraph down, 2 sentences in. And he would begin to quote what is in that part of the book, right? So he would know it. This kid who could barely read instantly memorized the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. And she did this several times in a row. Random page, select the page, and then second time she's like, okay, what's on page 898? And he would begin reciting the book, or reciting the page 898. And he had never cracked the spine once in his life. So I did this 7 or 8 times, and his accuracy was 100%. You know, this did make him stand out for himself. He did, I don't want to use the word selfishly, but he did use it for himself, right? So he was a Christian. He was very strongly religious, so he would, the other night he would sleep on his Bible. He memorized the Bible, and to the day he died, he did not need to read the Bible. He memorized it. So it's really strange. This is, as far as I know, the only instance where somebody can sleep with a book under their pillow and know the book. Some people say it's like transference of knowledge. I don't know. We don't have a good word for it because it hasn't happened again. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There were other things in his life. There were records of his grandfather that he had a way with animals. And Edgar recounted as an older man. Excuse me. Oh, goodness. He recounted stories of his grandfather as an older man where he would see his grandfather as a child, and he said his grandfather would like walk out of the fields, and he always wore this big wide straw hat, and he would walk out of the fields and there'd be like animals following him, and he would whistle a couple little notes and birds would fly up and land on his shoulder or on his hand or on his arm. And at one of the instances, he was sitting in the grass talking with his grandfather, and a snake slithered up, and Edgar says, no, it was a snake, it's dangerous. And his grandfather told him, no, this snake isn't dangerous, he's a friend. And the snake climbed his grandfather, went up around his hat, and hung out there. So, it seems like there is some type of generational gift being handed down here. To say the least, it's really hard to say. Generally, with major genetic conditions, we are skipping every other generation, right? But it seems like maybe Edgar Cayce got part of his gift from his grandfather or his grandparents. It's hard to say. But it's a very unique situation. There's so much more. If you ever get some time, go out and read the book Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet. Fantastic book. It's gigantic. It's like 3,000 pages, but it is a very, very thorough telling of this man's life. And there are so many more details from his childhood that just aren't being retold here because we're just locked in for time. Well, let's dive into Act 2, everybody. The emergence of the sleeping prophet. Act 2, everybody. Act 2. So Edgar Cayce did not wake up one morning and decide to become a psychic. The identity was forced on him by circumstance, desperation, and the uncanny reliability of something speaking through him. Ooh, sorry about that. I had to sneeze. Act 1 ended with the hypnosis session that returned its voice. That moment was the ignition point. Act 2 is where the engine truly starts running and where the quiet young photographer becomes an improbable national figure. So after his voice returned, Edgar did what most rational men would do. He tried to return to a normal life. He went back to photography, refocused on his work, and he did everything he could to put the hypnosis incident behind him. But news travels fast in small towns, and whispers travel even faster. Word spread of the man who diagnosed his own illness while unconscious, speaking in fluent medical terminology. People who had exhausted every doctor in the country began showing up at Edgar's door. To be clear, Edgar did not want this. He feared it. And he prayed that his God would take away the ability if it was anything other than divine. But the more he resisted, the more insistent the requests became. Parents with sick children, workers injured in accidents, elderly men and women with conditions no one understood, neighbors, strangers that came quietly, respectfully, but with a desperation Edgar couldn't ignore. And despite his fear, he found it nearly impossible to turn someone away when they begged him for help. One of the earliest readings were simple. Edgar would lie down, close his eyes, and fall into the familiar trance-like state, and speak in low, calm tones. His wife Gertrude or another witness would sit beside him, acting as a recorder. Someone would ask about the condition of a person, often someone physically present, sometimes miles away, and Cayce would begin giving instructions. He described bodily systems with anatomical detail far beyond his 8th grade education. He recommended treatments involving specific compounds, herbs, stones, or procedures he had never studied. And he spoke with absolute confidence. When he returned to waking consciousness, he remembered none of it. The early cases were modest but convincing. A local woman suffering from chronic headaches was told that a small vertebra in her neck was misaligned, something no doctor had considered. After manipulative adjustment by a trained practitioner, her symptoms vanished. A child plagued by persistent skin infections was given a remedy involving a rare but available ointment mixed with a particular mineral solution, and within a week the condition improved dramatically. Witnesses couldn't explain how the young man lying there motionless on a couch understood medical pathology better than trained physicians, but enough of the early readings produced measurable results that gave skepticism way to curiosity. Then curiosity gave way to something more volatile: attention. The medical establishment in Hopkinsville was split. Some doctors viewed Cayce as a fascinating anomaly, a patient whose subconscious mind might hold untapped diagnostic wisdom. A handful observed his sessions with clinical detachment, testing him, challenging him, and verifying his claims. Others viewed him as a dangerous fraud, a hypnotic trick, or at worst a vessel for something unholy. Ministers echoed these concerns. The idea that a man could enter a trance and speak with knowledge he had never learned came uncomfortably close to spiritualism, which the church considered occult and forbidden at the time. Edgar understood this tension deeply. His lifelong fear of spiritual deception intensified. He didn't want to violate his faith, and he didn't want to lead anyone astray. He wanted to be a good husband, a good Christian, and a good man. But the readings kept working, and that complicated everything. Around this time, Edgar met Dr. Wesley Ketchum, a physician intrigued by the photographic accuracy of Cayce's medical descriptions. Ketchum began bringing difficult cases to Edgar under controlled conditions, with multiple witnesses. Edgar diagnosed patients he had never met and offered treatments that Ketchum sometimes reluctantly followed. And to Ketchum's surprise, many of the results were outstanding. One case involved a boy with stubborn gastrointestinal illness that eluded every doctor's understanding. Cayce identified inflammation in a specific section of the small intestine, described the cause, and outlined a detailed treatment plan. Ketchum followed the instructions and the boy recovered quickly. Ketchum wrote about these cases publicly, which triggered something Cayce dreaded: national interest. Articles about the sleeping diagnostician appeared in medical journals and local newspapers. Some praised his gifts, and others mocked them. Skeptics challenged the logic of attributing medical knowledge to a trance state, and believers argued that Edgar was clearly channeling something extraordinary: divine intervention, innate psychic talent, or our ancestral knowledge of the human body. Edgar hated the attention. He begged Ketchum not to publish more articles. He feared becoming a spectacle, but the press had already collapsed the barrier between his private life and the national conversation. Requests began arriving from around the country. People wrote letters. They sent descriptions of illness, injuries, long-standing medical mysteries. They asked for readings conducted remotely, something Edgar had never considered possible. And one day, reluctantly, he attempted a trance reading for somebody not physically present. And it worked. And this changed everything. In a reading for a woman who lived several states away, Edgar described not only her medical condition, but the layout of her home, the chair she sat in, and the positioning of her injured leg. He gave instructions for treatment as if he was standing in the room. When the instructions were followed, the woman improved. The idea that Edgar could reach across distance, diagnose illness, and describe environments he had never seen defied every model of science and medicine at the time. It also drew sharp criticism from skeptics who argued that such claims were impossible without fraud. But Edgar wasn't making money from these readings. He routinely refused payment or accepted token compensation only when absolutely necessary. His lifestyle did not suggest deception, and the consistency of his results continued to draw attention. Meanwhile, his personal life grew increasingly strained. Gertrude, skeptical of physical phenomena from the beginning, found herself torn between love for her husband and fear of what was happening to him. She worried that the trance states were harming his health. She feared backlash from the community. She feared what it meant spiritually, and she feared for their future. Edgar, feeling his tension, attempted to limit the number of readings he performed, but the more he tried to say no, the more desperate the requests became. Families wrote to him about children dying. Men wrote to him about their failing lungs. Women wrote to him about cancers, tumors, paralysis, infertility, mysterious pains doctors could not explain. And Edgar could simply not ignore the suffering. Compassion was his weakness and his strength, and the reading numbers increased. But with every trance, Edgar grew more exhausted. And by this point, witnesses had described Edgar's trance behavior in meticulous detail. His body would relax, his breathing would slow, his eyelids would flutter, his voice would change, smoother, lower, more authoritative. And once the reading was complete, when he awoke, he would often feel drained, disoriented, or occasionally ill. Doctors observed the sessions were baffling. They found no evidence of mental illness or neurological disorder. Nothing about his physiology suggested that he should be able to access the knowledge he displayed. And yet the phenomena continued. Some classified it as automatisms of the unconscious mind. Some framed it as... Why is this full of medical terminology? Jesus. Some framed it as hyperesthesia, an expanded sensory awareness. And others whispered theories about mediumship, clairvoyance, or spirit communication. But no one had an explanation that fit neatly. A subtle but important detail emerged during this era. The voice that spoke during his readings did not always sound like Edgar. The tone changed, the vocabulary changed, the cadence changed. Sometimes he used archaic phrasing. Sometimes he spoke with clinical precision. Sometimes he answered questions before they were finished being asked. In a few rare cases, he even referenced events beyond immediate questioning, hinting at past lives, soul history, or karmic connection. These early glimpses foreshadowed what Act 3 would become: reincarnation, the Akashic Record, and Atlantis. Yeah, that's coming. Get ready for that. But for now, Edgar remained focused on medical readings, trying to avoid the theological minefields he sensed further ahead. And by the late 1910s, Edgar Cayce was no longer just a local curiosity. He had become a national figure in the realm of alternative healing. Admired by believers, attacked by skeptics, and studied by doctors who didn't know what to make of him. This period placed enormous pressure on Edgar's spiritual life. He prayed constantly for guidance. He begged God to ensure the readings did not mislead people. He struggled with the fear that he could be channeling something deceptive. He worried that he was betraying his Christian faith by embracing a psychic role he never wanted. Gertrude's health was also wavered during this period, adding emotional strain. Close friends later reported that the couple frequently discussed abandoning the readings entirely and moving somewhere new to start over. But the demands kept growing, and Edgar, unable to ignore the suffering of others, kept saying yes. And eventually the strain boiled over into a dramatic collapse. Edgar accepted a series of readings for a group of businessmen who hoped to use his abilities to predict financial trends. This period, later known as the business readings, nearly destroyed him. As soon as money, speculation, and personal gain entered the picture, the readings began failing. The trance state became unstable. Edgar felt physically sick afterward. The sense of spiritual danger increased dramatically, and the business based on his predictions failed. It was the worst moment of his career up to that point. He vowed never again to use his readings for financial gain. The gift, if it truly was a gift, had boundaries. And Edgar learned these boundaries the hard way. After this collapse, Cayce returned to medical readings, humbled and frightened. But the pattern was clear. The readings had a moral alignment. When used to help others selflessly, they worked. When used for greed, they withered. This realization would shape the rest of his life. And by the early 1920s, Edgar finally accepted that he was not going to escape this role in his life. He did not embrace it enthusiastically, but he embraced it sincerely. He moved to Virginia Beach, where he would later establish the groundwork for the organization known as the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE. But in Act 2's timeline, ARE is still years away. What matters now is the transition. Edgar Cayce is leaving behind the remnants of a normal life. He is drifting toward a destiny that will define him and place him under scrutiny for generations. The readings have expanded, the requests have multiplied, and Edgar stands on the threshold of a far stranger chapter. One that will take him far beyond medicine and into the mysteries of reincarnation, the Akashic Record, and the world of Atlantis. Yes, Atlantis. That Atlantis. The one under the water Atlantis. The Disney movie Atlantis. So that's the end of Act 2. I want to point out that super interesting that he's able to make these very accurate medical readings, and he does them for free. But when somebody comes along and tries to use his predictions for monetary gain, it's interesting that the predictions fail. Excuse me, I had to clear my throat there. It almost gives like a sense of like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like there's intelligence behind the gift giving. Like whatever gave him the gift knows that if he's doing the right thing, his gift will be accurate. But if he's doing it for the wrong reasons, going to take the gift away, right? So, I mean, it leans towards the thought of whatever gave him the gift, spiritual, something from the Akashic record, karmic, whatever, you know, God as you understand him. There's 1,000 different things that it could be done, or it could be said about it, where the gift comes from. But it definitely kind of leans towards an intelligent part, right? Something there is saying, yeah, you're doing this, you're doing it for the right reasons, we're going to continue to give you the gift. But as soon as you abuse it, we're going to take the gift away. And I will say it's interesting that he moved to Virginia Beach. That is very close to where I am. I had no idea that that he moved to the Virginia Beach area. I want to see if this is on Google Maps or something. Wow. I had no idea. I have driven past this. How far away is this from me? It's an hour and 29 minutes away from me. I absolutely should go. I had no idea. Let's check it out. So this is Virginia Beach. And look, I've been down this road many, many times. Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment. Let's look at the photos. I want to see photos. Wow, it's a huge facility. I had no idea. Oh, cool. It's one of those big, what do they call those? It's like a meditation path. You know what I'm talking about? It's where it's like you start here and you work your way through the pattern, and they say that by the time you hit the middle, you've figured out what it is you need to figure out. Oh, cool. I got a little bookstore in there. Whoa. Complete set of the original records. Holy shit. Like, I had no idea this was here. I mean, really cool. Like, there's a healing meditation class. Like, what do they do here? Is it just a gift shop? It's a huge facility to just, you know, be empty all the time, right? I'm just blown away by the original records. This is the complete records of Edgar Cayce for your viewing pleasure. Absolutely amazing. I wonder if... Wow, look at that. What are the odds of that? A rainbow over the facility. So what is this place actually for? Let's look at EdgarCayce.org. Oh, well, it's closed right now, but... I'm having a hard time understanding what they really do here. Health Center and Spa, Casey's Corner. I guess they do...
Viewersstreambo.com. Remove the space at GLLPGPML.
Really? You're gonna interrupt my podcast for that? Really? You couldn't find a better time, a better place with more viewers? I have one person watching. Yeah. Way to ruin things for people, buddy. Get out of here. You've been banned. Anyway. Yeah, it's cool that they've actually got a facility. I didn't know that it was actually, like, open to the public, that you could just go in there. You know, it's a shame that they have memberships and you've got to pay to go do some of these things, but I don't think that Edgar Cayce would agree with that. I'm just saying. Well, let's tie into Act 3. Let's check out what Act 3's got going on. The Depths of Trance, Akashic Record, Reincarnation, and Atlantis. We're going to talk about Atlantis in this one. Let's get into it. Act 3, everybody. Act 3. So by the time Edgar Cayce entered the 1920s, his medical readings had become widely known. His reputation had grown beyond anything he'd ever wanted, and the demands on his time were crushing. But what came next? The evolution of his readings into metaphysical territory wasn't something he planned, encouraged, or even believed in. It emerged slowly, unintentionally, and under circumstances that carved a deep divide between the mad Edgar Cayce was and the entity that spoke through him while he slept. Medical readings were one thing, diagnosing a tumor, recommending a poultice, describing a misaligned vertebrae. But the trance state began offering more. It began reaching into places that no doctor could verify, no scientist could measure, no minister could comfortably accept. It began with a concept no one had ever heard of in rural America: the Akashic Records. Okay, so I'm a big believer of the Akashic Records, for the record. Akashic Record for the record? Yeah. The earliest hint arrived almost accidentally during a reading for a man with chronic emotional instability. In the middle of describing the man's physical condition, Cayce's trance voice abruptly shifted.
In the records of his soul, much of this trouble arises from experiences long before this present earth life,
he said. The witness froze. This was not normal. Cayce had never mentioned soul histories or long before this present earth life. Before. No one in the room asked about reincarnation. The question had been purely medical. But the reading continued.
He carries memories from a life in the ancient lands where responsibilities were ignored. This must be corrected now.
The session ended, and Edgar woke to confused and anxious faces. When they explained what he'd said, he was horrified. Reincarnation had no place in a Christian worldview. The idea of a soul carrying mistakes from past incarnations contradicted everything he believed. He apologized, he prayed for forgiveness, and he considered stopping readings altogether. But then the next reading made reference to a different client's soul journey, and then another, each time describing events from what sounded like past lives. Edgar found himself in a theological crisis deeper than anything he'd ever experienced. As months passed, reincarnation moved from an occasional anomaly to a major theme in the readings. Patients with lifelong phobias, physical defects, or emotional struggles were told it had originated in past lives. Sometimes as farmers in medieval Europe, sometimes as priests in Egypt, and sometimes as soldiers in Asia, thousands of years earlier. According to the trance voice, the soul did not begin at birth, nor did it end at death. It moved through cycles, learning lessons, balancing debts, and evolving morally and spiritually. This was not a minor detail. It was the foundation of a vast, internally consistent philosophy that began spilling out through Cayce in reading after reading. Edgar rejected it. Gertrude rejected it. The church rejected it forcefully. But their readings were unrelenting. And the clients, many of them Christians, found comfort in explanations that unlocked a sense of purpose behind their struggles. Why do some people suffer disproportionately? Why do some feel an immediate connection to strangers or places they've never been? Why do certain patterns seem to repeat across generations? Whether one believed in reincarnation or not, the scope and complexity of these narratives were unlike anything seen in America's spirituality at the time. But the readings were just getting started. During another session, Edgar's voice, deeper, steadier, spoke of a greater record, beyond time itself. He said, quote, "In the book of life, the Akashic Record, all thoughts, deeds, and experiences of each soul are written. It is from this record that information may be obtained." End quote. This was the first time the name Akashic, a term rooted in Sanskrit meaning ether or sky, yet completely foreign to Cayce's education. According to the readings, the Akashic Records were a universal database of every soul's past, present, and potential future. A spiritual archive accessible only when the conscious mind is silent, and a multi-dimensional record that exists outside of time. The trance voice claimed it was reading these records directly, not from spirits, not from intuition, but from an objective, cosmic archive. The idea electrified believers and horrified skeptics. It also deepened the rift between Cayce and traditional Christianity. Ministers warned that seeking information outside Scripture was spiritually perilous, but Edgar agonized over whether he was being led astray. But as always, the readings continued uncontrollably. And then the Akashic Records began supplying information about something even more shocking. And get ready for this. This is what you've all been waiting for. They supplied information about the lost city of Atlantis. Yes, you heard that correctly. The lost city of Atlantis. The Atlantis. The one you've been thinking about this whole time I've been talking because I keep mentioning it. Atlantis. That one. That Atlantis. Not Atlanta. Atlantis. The city under the sea. Where Ariel from The Little Mermaid's from. This is the crazy part here. Y'all ready for this stuff here? This is crazy. During a series of readings in the early 1920s, the trance voice casually referenced the Atlantean incarnations of clients. At first, witnesses thought this was metaphorical. But Cayce's readings didn't deal in metaphor. They dealt in specifics. In over dozens of sessions, the trance voice described a civilization that seemed part Platonic myth and part cosmic history. A technologically advanced society predating Egypt, energy powered by crystals and manipulation of earth forces, airships, submarines, devices that sounded eerily modern. 3 major periods of destruction, the last one around 10,600 BC, and survivors fleeing to Egypt, the Pyrenees, and the Americas. According to these readings, dozens, eventually hundreds, of Edgar's patients had lived among the Atlanteans. The material was sweeping, bold, and profoundly controversial. It also influenced the development of an entire modern field, New Age thought, past life regression, and alternative archaeology. Edgar wanted nothing to do with it, of course. But the readings poured out uncontrolled like a river that refused to obey its banks. If Atlantis was shocking, what came next was seismic. The readings began describing initiation rites in ancient temples, mystical schools in Egypt influenced by Atlantean refugees, the construction of the Great Pyramid under the guidance of Council of Initiates, and, quote, a hall of records buried near the Sphinx containing the history of human origins and Atlantis. At one point, Cayce's readings claimed that the Sphinx was far older than archaeologists believed, a claim that would later become part of an alternative archaeological decades later. The trance voice provided details so extensively they filled entire notebooks, city names, priesthoods, hierarchies, technological designs, spiritual practices. Edgar, when he woke up, would sit silently, overwhelmed and clutching his Bible for reassurance. Could you imagine being a devout Christian, going to sleep, or going under hypnosis, and while you're in hypnosis, you channel a voice that's not yours, describing the lost city of Atlantis, rites and rituals of the Egyptians, things hidden in the sand beneath the Sphinx? It is absolutely bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. So, my mind goes to, like, maybe when he woke up, he was, like, clutching his Bible like a cartoon character. Right? Eyes wide. And he's shaking. He's shaking real bad, holding his Bible. That's just where my mind goes. Crossing himself 125 times before he continues. So just as Cayce was grappling with past lives and ancient civilizations, the readings pushed him into another dangerous category: prophecy. And among the predictions, geological upheavals, dramatic climate changes, shifts in the Earth's magnetic structure, the rise of political powers, the fall of others, a period of global conflict interpreted later as World War II, a future era of spiritual renewal beginning in the 21st century. Some of these predictions would be revisited for decades, with believers citing their accuracy and skeptics pointing out the ambiguity phrasing the technicality of prophecy. But Edgar did not want to be a prophet. Prophecy carried heavy theological implications he did not feel worthy to carry, but the trance voice did not ask his opinion. It simply spoke. Hold on, how close are we getting to the end here? Okay, so we're still in the middle of Act 3. I want to take a beat right here while we're... Oh, cool. The soundboard just shut off. Hold on. Let me get this brought back up. Gotta have our sounds, people. I don't know why that turned off. We gotta have our sounds. There we go. I do believe, maybe I'm wrong, I do believe that Edgar Cayce predicted 9/11. Let's look it up. Oh, no, he didn't. What was it? There was something he predicted that came true recently. See, political events. Political events. Some recent interpretations suggest Cayce foresaw the current divisive political climate, including the potential allusions to the period around the 2024 U.S. election. Predictions regarding significant geological changes, such as the shifting poles, rising sea levels, and the sinking and/or rising of land masses, and often re-examine the context of modern climate change and seismic activity, predicted many changes before the year 2000 that did not physically occur, such as the destruction of New York and San Francisco. That's interesting. He hints at a future with advanced, seamless communication, or seen by some as the anticipation of the internet and global networks. Cayce predicted China's emergence as a major global power, a topic still relevant in today's geopolitical landscape. And a core of his teachings emphasized internal personal transformation as a prerequisite for external world exchanges, a message that his followers continue to stress is relevant today. He accurately predicted the stock market crash of 1929. He predicted the start of World War II. He predicted his own death and burial date. But on the flip side of the coin, he did predict New York, LA, and San Francisco to be destroyed by the year 2000. He predicted a magnetic pole shift in 2001. And he predicted Atlantis would rise again in the late 1960s, which didn't happen. So take that for what it's worth. What's up? I see people watching on YouTube. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Glad you're here. We are live, currently live. If you wanted to ask questions or get into the conversation, feel free to chat. The chat is live. Speech chat is active. You can type and I will hear what you're typing. Feel free. I don't care if I'm talking, type in that stuff. We'll talk all about it. Welcome, everybody from YouTube. So as the readings expanded, something curious happened. The medical and metaphysical elements fused. A patient with chronic fear might be told their trauma stemmed from a violent death in the past life. A person with reoccurring dreams could be told they were remembering priesthood training in Egypt. A man with unexplained skin condition might be told he was balancing karmic debts from actions in Atlantis. Even physical deformities or personality traits were linked to prior incarnations. According to the readings, the soul shaped the body as a tool to correct, or explore unresolved lessons. To Edgar, this was deeply uncomfortable, but he could not deny the consistency of the readings or the relief they brought people. As the readings grew in scope and complexity, Edgar paid a steep price. His health declined dramatically. He lost weight, he slept poorly, he experienced anxiety, fatigue, and weakness after sessions. Sometimes he woke from the trance, drenched in sweat. Sometimes he felt drained for days. Doctors examining him found no clear cause. Witnesses noticed that the trance readings took more from him every year. The voice speaking through him seemed tireless, but Edgar's human body was not built for this. Still, the requests multiply, and still, Edgar said yes. By now, Edgar Cayce had attracted the attention of scholars, occultists, theologians, spiritualists, and skeptics alike. The skeptics claimed his unconscious mind generated the information, that he was absorbing details subconsciously from books or conversations, and that the readings about Atlantis and Egypt and reincarnations were elaborate fantasies. However, believers claimed the consistency and accuracy indicated a source beyond human knowledge. The medical results alone proved authenticity, and the metaphysical material was too detailed for an uneducated man to invent. Both sides argued with passion. Both sides brought evidence, and neither side could fully explain the totality of what Cayce produced. The deeper the trance readings went into reincarnation and ancient civilizations, the more Edgar struggled with his faith. I want to stop for a second and just say, we're going to talk a lot about Christianity in this one. This is not a Christianity podcast. We're talking about a person. Christianity was a foundation in this guy, so we're going to talk about it. I don't know what your, listeners at home, what your beliefs are. This is part of the story. I'm sorry. Personally, I'm not a Christian. But we're going to talk about it. It's just, we're giving Christian details based on a Christian storyteller here. You don't have to leave because we're talking about Jesus and stuff. I promise this isn't the subject here. His Christianity was conservative, literal, and traditional. Reincarnation was not compatible. The Akashic Records were not compatible. Atlantis was not compatible. Past lives as Egyptian priests were not compatible. He felt trapped between a divine calling and a spiritual peril. He prayed constantly, he begged God for clarity, and he asked if he should stop. But the readings refused to stop. Edgar came to believe that if he used the readings for good, never for money, never for selfishness, then they might be truly aligned with a higher purpose, and this became his guiding rule for the rest of his life. And by the mid-1930s, the trance readings had become a vast system of metaphysical covering. Human origins, soul evolution, karmic correction, cosmic consciousness, spiritual laws, health principles, past civilizations, future earth changes. It was not a loose collection of mystical ideas, it was a structured worldview, whether divinely inspired or subconsciously imagination. It was an enormous scope, and Cayce himself never claimed to understand it. He never took credit for it. He never pretended he was a prophet. He always said he was simply reading the records. So here by the end of Act 3, Edgar Cayce's life is at its most mystical and its most strained. His health is failing, his worldview is collapsing under the weight of his own readings, his followers are growing, his skeptics are louder, his wife is terrified, and his family is exhausted. And yet Edgar feels more purpose than ever. He believes he's helping people in a way that he cannot deny. He believes the information coming through him deserves higher good, and he believes he has no choice but to continue. But in Act 4, we will see the cost. So that was the end of Act 3. There's a lot to take in. It really is. I said it earlier. I am a believer in the Akashic Record. I believe in what is called egg theory. If anybody in chat wants to holler out, I'll tell you all about egg theory. It's wild. It's a little different. But I have my own reasons for believing it. But, the story of Edgar Cayce kind of is in tandem with egg theory. Kind of. I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe in the Akashic Record. I do believe in past lives. And if you come, probably next season, we'll have my co-host back. And one of them is a licensed regression hypnosis therapist. And he would have loved this episode. I would have loved to, I may reach out to him and get a statement from him about this week's episode. I think he would really enjoy this subject because he has done past life regression hypnosis therapy. And I would love to hear his 2 cents on the matter. It's really interesting. I am scared to death to do past life regression hypnosis. I would love to do it. And if I ever did it, I would probably record it and then put it here on the podcast and show it off. It comes down to the complexity of the human soul. I don't believe that once you die, your soul dies or goes to some crazy heaven. Reincarnation makes the most sense to me, and that's why I feel like the story of Edgar Cayce is so important. I really do. I really do. But enough of my rambling. We're going to get off into Act 4. You all ready for Act 4? I'm ready for Act 4. And I'm ready for another one of these cold beverages. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's get into Act 4. So by the time Edgar Cayce entered the final decade of his life, he had become a paradox in motion. A man revered as a prophet, feared as a heretic, and admired for his compassion, and scrutinized for his accuracy. Hold on, sidebar. Wait, I got a sound effect for this. Where's it at? Sidebar. Can you imagine helping people for free with debilitating medical conditions and being criticized for being too accurate? Gonna call bullshit on that. So those people criticizing ardent liquors.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
Yeah, that's right. His medical readings still helped scores of people, and the metaphysical material continued inspiring followers. But the weight of expectation now bore down on him like a physical burden. And where Acts 1 and through 3 trace the rise of the sleeping prophet, Act 4 charts the steep, unavoidable cost of that ascent. Because even miracles come with debt, and Edgar Cayce was running out of time to pay. Cayce never charged meaningful money for his readings. He accepted donations, but he refused fixed fees. This meant he was poor for most of his life. As the number of people seeking help grew into the thousands, the pressure to keep up was relentless. On an average day in the 1930s, he might perform 6 to 10 readings, sometimes more. Each took a visible toll on him. Witnesses described him as pale, fatigued, trembling, or disoriented upon awakening. Some days he stumbled to his feet like a man shaken from a nightmare. Other days he could barely walk from the couch to his bedroom. But still the requests kept arriving. Still Edgar said yes. His friends begged him to slow down. Gertrude pleaded with him to rest. Doctors warned him the stress was damaging his nervous system. But Edgar believed that refusing someone in need could be spiritually worse than dying from exhaustion. His compassion became its own kind of illness. One of the earliest major controversies erupted when a businessman named David Kahn attempted to use Cayce's abilities to form an investment venture. The idea was simple. Cayce would give readings to help identify profitable opportunities, and the group would make money to support his humanitarian and medical goals. At first, this seemed to be noble. Edgar wanted to fund a hospital based on his holistic principles. Investors wanted to help. But the readings were clear. Using the psychic gifts for profit was dangerous. Cayce ignored the warning. Then everything unraveled. Some of the investment predictions were wrong. Money was lost. Investors blamed Cayce. Newspapers mocked him. Rumors spread that he had tried to become a financial prophet and failed. It wasn't entirely failed, but the damage was done. Public trust faltered, and Edgar fell into a deep depression, and the readings grew more erratic whenever money entered the equation. It was the second time his abilities had failed around business ventures, and the lesson was brutal. The gift would not operate for greed. When misused, it collapsed. For Cayce, for years, Cayce dreamed of creating a hospital that combined traditional medicine with the holistic treatments given in his readings. Diet, massage, electrotherapy, osteopathy, and natural remedies. He envisioned a place where people could heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Finally, in 1928, the dream materialized. Cayce Hospital for Research and Enlightenment opened in Virginia Beach. Funded mostly by wealthy admirers, doctors were hired, staff moved in, the building beautiful white columns, clean rooms, and a serene environment. But almost immediately problems emerged. First, the Great Depression struck. Donations dried up. Patients couldn't afford to travel or pay for extended treatments. Second, administrative infighting erupted between the medical staff and the metaphysical supporters. Doctors wanted empirical standards, and supporters wanted spiritual alignment. Third, Edgar himself was stretched impossibly thin. He was the hospital's engine, but also its greatest vulnerability. If he became sick or overwhelmed, the enterprise faltered. And by 1931, the hospital collapsed financially. Edgar was devastated. He believed he had failed God. The strain of the failure contributed to his personal spiritual crisis. He questioned his worth, his purpose, and whether he had truly understood the readings at all. Though the building later became ARE headquarters, the collapse of the hospital marked the first major turning point downward in Cayce's life. By the mid-1930s, Cayce's fame made him a target not only for skeptics but for law enforcement. Psychic healers were already under scrutiny in America, particularly those dealing with medical advice. Two events amplified this vulnerability. One, a patient died after not following the trance instructions properly. The family blamed the readings, and the case drew attention. And two, a sheriff claimed Cayce was practicing medicine without a license. Police raided one of his reading sessions. Officers demanded documentation. They questioned witnesses. They threatened charges. The incident terrified Edgar, not because he feared imprisonment, but because he feared the readings would be shut down forever. After weeks of legal tension, the charges unraveled. He wasn't pretending to be a doctor. He wasn't prescribing for profit. And he never touched patients physically or administered treatments. But the damage was emotional. Cayce was shaken, humiliated, and exhausted. He considered quitting permanently. Even among believers today, some of Cayce's prophecies are considered flawed or incorrect, and these mistakes became ammunition for critics in his lifetime. Examples include the return of Atlantis. Cayce predicted that portions of Atlantis would rise near Bimini in the 1960s through the Bimini Road. Though the Bimini Road discovery fueled speculation, it was not universally accepted as evidence of Atlantis. Quick sidebar. Have y'all seen the Bimini Road? So, first off, let me see when was the Bimini Road found. In 1968, so this was like 23 years after he died. Let me show y'all pictures of this. Check this out. The Bimini Road. So this is a paved road underwater that... Yeah, this is a... Check this out. There we go. Open image. This is underwater, people. This is a paved road. Nobody knows how old this is. And this is one of many, many pictures. There's pictures of people swimming down here in this giant paved stones. These are stones as big as monoliths in ancient Egypt. Yeah, check this one out. These are massive, folks. Absolutely massive. And these are stones that lead from the beach into the deep ocean. They still don't know where it goes. He predicted this. The word Bimini was in his prediction. Just saying. Don't write him off yet, folks. Don't write him off. One of the others is massive earth changes. By 1998, the readings mentioned pole shifts, catastrophic flooding, and dramatic geological changes. Some of these were interpreted symbolically. Skeptics mocked them as failed predictions. 3. Russia as the hope of the world. A reading described Russia becoming spiritually influential. Critics argued this prophecy was vague, political, or unrealistic. 4. The world harmony in the 21st century. Another prediction suggested a period of global enlightenment beginning between 1999 and 2001. Clearly, this has not unfolded as described. Cayce's supporters argued that timelines were symbolic, not literal. Skeptics claimed the failures discredited his entire body of work, and Edgar himself hated prophecy. He insisted he never asked for it, never relied on it, and preferred medical guidance over metaphysics, but the trance voice gave what it gave, and every incorrect prediction weighed on him like sin. And then there were the high-profile failures. While thousands of medical readings were considered successful by their recipients, a handful of failures became devastating, one of which was a child who was misdiagnosed. One reading incorrectly identified the cause of a child's fever. The mistake led the family to delay conventional treatment, and the child died later. Edgar was inconsolable. He blamed himself. Witnesses said his remorse was so severe he stopped breathing for weeks, unable to speak without crying. Another was a reading for a paralyzed man described the long-term treatment plan. The family followed it meticulously for years with no improvement. They later blamed Cayce for offering false hope. But there are cases where skeptics exposed contradictions. Certain readings contradicted earlier ones. Different timelines, conflicting historical details, and variations in metaphysical explanations. Critics called the evidence of subconscious confabulation. Edgar didn't argue. He accepted responsibility quietly, praying for forgiveness, but each failure carved deeper scars into his emotional health. By the late 1930s, the divide between Cayce's supporters and detractors had become a trench. Supporters saw miraculous healings, profound spiritual insights, a humble, selfless man, a trove of wisdom ahead of its time. But skeptics saw dangerous medical diagnosis, unverifiable metaphysics, failed prophecies, and mental or dissociative phenomena. Prominent voices in medicine attacked him. Religious leaders condemned him. Newspapers alternated between praise and ridicule. Cayce felt himself torn apart by public opinion. His inner turmoil worsened. He feared misleading people. He feared hurting someone unintentionally, and he feared divine judgment. But above all, he feared stopping. Because every critic calling for him a fraud, there were 10 families writing desperate letters begging for help, and Edgar could not ignore them. Gertrude, his wife, aged prematurely under the stress. She struggled with her own health issues. She carried the emotional weight of Edgar's work, his guilt, his collapses, his inability to say no. She supported him because she loved him, not because she believed in his gifts. Her own breakdowns became more frequent. Edgar's elder son stepped in as administrator, organizer, protector. Hewland believed fully that his father's work was true. He also understood the damage it was doing. He shielded Edgar from legal trouble, financial ruin, and predatory opportunists. He would later become the guardian of Edgar's legacy. He struggled with the public scrutiny and the strange dual life, one father during the day, another speaking in trance. He loved his father, but feared that the gift was tearing him apart. The family lived on unstable finances, emotional turbulence, and constant public attention. They admired Edgar, but they also suffered because of him. The strain increased each year until one event shattered any resemblance of balance. Oh, here goes our soundboard again. I don't know why it keeps shutting off. I don't know why. I don't know why it's timing out. I guess I gotta touch the screen every now and again. It has never shut off while I was using it before. Sorry about that. It was 1944. Edgar Cayce was performing more readings than at any time in his life, sometimes up to 8 a day. His body was failing, but he refused to stop. World War II enthroned countless families into chaos, and Edgar felt morally obligated to help them. Then came the reading that changed everything. One day in a trance, Edgar spoke a sentence so stark that his secretary froze mid-note. It read, quote, "The body cannot continue this work. Rest, or the work will finish." End quote. It was a warning from the same source that guided him for decades, and Edgar ignored it. Weeks later, he collapsed. He suffered a massive physical breakdown, exhaustion so severe he could barely stand, speak, or stay awake. Doctors told him he had no reserves left. His nervous system was failing. His body had been pushed past its limit for years, and the debt had finally come due. Even then, sick and barely conscious, Edgar tried to schedule more readings. His family intervened. They forced him to bed. They banned him from working, but Edgar protested, desperate not to abandon people waiting for help. He begged God to make him well enough to continue, but the readings had given their final warning, and Edgar ignored them. In September of 1944, Edgar agreed to perform one last reading, not for someone else, but for himself. His son, Hugh Lynn, asked the questions. This is a direct quote of the conversation between his son and himself. It says, "What should be done for the body?" The trance voice answered calmly, "Rest. Much rest. If the body does this, it will live. If not, the end is near." Gertrude asked the next question, "How long should the rest be?" The voice replied, "Until the new year." Then, after a long silence, "The body will go home." Edgar woke up confused, unaware that he had just signed his own death certificate. He attempted to rest. He tried to follow the instructions, but the damage was irreversible. On January 3rd of 1945, just days after the new year arrived, exactly when the reading implied, Edgar Cayce died. He was 67 years old. When Cayce died, the public narrative focused on whether he was a prophet or a fraud. His family saw something different. A gentle man destroyed by companion, a humble soul consumed by the weight of 1,000, a body worn out by a gift he never asked for. But Act 4's truth is simple. Edgar Cayce did not die for mystery, he died for mercy, too much of it. He could not say no, and he would not let people suffer. He believed helping others was worth any cost, even his life. So that's the end of Act 4. And at this point in the story, we've lost Edgar Cayce. The man literally worked himself to death. There's no other way to put it. He worked himself to death. I don't know about you, but if I was given prophecy of when I was going to die and how to beat it, I would beat it. I would do whatever I could to keep myself alive longer. That's just me. You know, I'm sure there's a bunch of different things that come into play in. This concept is something I want to bring up at the end. Just keep that in mind. We're gonna rip through this last act here and get to final words and figure out whether or not Edgar Cayce's story is really paranormal or something else. So when Edgar Cayce... Oh, I'm sorry. This is Act 5, everybody. Act 5. When Edgar Cayce died on January 3rd, 1945, the world barely noticed. America was deep in World War II. Headlines tracked battles, fronts, casualties, and shifting alliances. Newspapers mentioned his passing only in brief columns. Excuse me, y'all. I had to sneeze. Newspapers mentioned his passing only in brief columns, some calling him a psychic healer, others labeling him as a controversial clairvoyant. You realized that the tired, soft-spoken man who had quietly slipped away in Virginia Beach had left behind one of the largest, strangest, and most meticulously documented bodies of psychic material in modern history. To his family, his death felt like the extinguishing of a candle that had been burning at both ends for decades. But to the world that would rediscover him decades later ahead, Edgar Cayce was only the beginning. Because prophets don't disappear, they grow. And the mystery surrounding Cayce would grow far larger after his death than it ever had while he lived. Gertrude, worn and exhausted from years of supporting him, died only 3 months after Edgar. Their sons Hugh Lynn and Edgar Evans suddenly became custodians of a legacy far larger than they had expected. And the vaults of readings, stacked in boxes, notebooks, transcripts, and typed pages became the backbone of what would become one of the most enduring institutions in paranormal research. Hugh Lynn Cayce understood something immediately. If Edgar's work wasn't preserved, studied, and cataloged, it would be twisted, manipulated, or lost. Anti-spiritualist organizations would try to discredit him. Sensationalists would distort the readings, and opportunists would try to profit from them. So Hugh Lynn did the only reasonable thing. He became the archivist and defender of his father's legacy. He restarted what he had attempted years earlier, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, quietly at first, then with growing ambition. The 14,000 plus readings Edgar left behind were not random seance scribblings or vague spiritual ramblings. They were dated, indexed, numbered, witnessed, carefully transcribed, organized by topic, patient, or session, supported by medical reports, letters, and physical testimonies. ARE became responsible for the most unusual library in America, a vast archive containing descriptions of illness and treatments, reincarnation histories, geological and political predictions, ancient civilizations, the spiritual structure of the universe, the mechanics of the soul. Researchers from every background visited Virginia Beach to study the readings. Some came seeking spiritual enlightenment. Others came looking for flaws, contradictions, or evidence of fraud. No one left unchanged. Because the size of the archive made one thing impossible to deny. Whether you believed in Edgar Cayce or not, the sheer consistency of the material demanded explanation. Let me pull up this picture one more freaking time, folks. Give me 30 seconds. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitch and you did not see these pictures earlier, y'all need to see these pictures. Hold on. Here it is. The complete works of Edgar Cayce. Every single prediction, every reading, every single thing this man talked about while he was in trance state, in leather-bound volumes, Virginia Beach, an hour and 29 minutes away from me. I really need to go to this place. This man's stuff was so meticulously recorded. I could only imagine. Like, I want to see one of these volumes open. I mean, they're huge. Those are 4-inch binders. Imagine that. Imagine that, folks. As interest in Cayce grew during the 1950s through the 70s, researchers from psychology, medicine, parapsychology, and anthropology attempted to analyze his work. First, there were the medical studies. Doctors reviewing the readings found a spectrum of results. Some medical instructions were outdated or wrong. Some were accurate for their time. Some were so detailed and correct they seemed impossible for someone with an 8th grade education. Some recommendations predated mainstream acceptance by decades. For example, the benefits of castor oil packs for inflammation conditions, the importance of diet for mental health, the connection between spinal alignment for organ function, and the significance of gut health. These concepts would become foundation in modern holistic medicine. Critics argued this was coincidence or subconscious intuition. Supporters continued that the accuracy rate was staggering given the era. And then there were the psychological evaluations. Psychologists examined the possibility of dissociative states, automatic writing, subconscious information processing, hypermesia, that's the abnormally enhanced memory, none of these fully explain the consistency and breadth of the readings. One psychologist famously described Cayce as, quote, a man whose unconscious mind seems to possess a library no one can account for, end quote. Then there's the parapsychological view. Parapsychologists studied Cayce alongside other anonymous cases of trance mediumship and psychic diagnosis. Cayce stood apart for one reason: documentation. Massive, irrefutable documentation. Do I need to show you guys the image of that place again? Do I need to pull it up? You can see it again? Those hundreds of leather-bound books of his readings? He was the most transparent psychic in American history. His works were always preserved. By the 1960s and 70s, Edgar Cayce's influence expanded far beyond his family at ARA. New Age movements embraced Cayce as foundational. Many concepts popular in modern metaphysics traced directly to his readings: soul groups, Akashic Records, past life patterns, historic hearings, earth changes, spiritual evolution, energy work. Cayce became required reading for spiritual groups worldwide. Authors like Charles Berlitz and later Graham Hancock built theories inspired by Cayce's claims: a lost civilization predating Egypt, cataclysmic earth disasters, hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx. Though mainstream archaeologists dismissed such ideas, they became central to alternative history movements. Then there were the holistic health advocates. Cayce's remedies influenced early neuropathy and integrative medicine. Clinics and practitioners adopted his approaches to diet, manual therapy, and emotional health. His readings on karma, soul purpose, and personal transformation contributed to the rise of modern self-development philosophies. Whether or not one believed in Cayce's psychic abilities, his influence became undeniable. But then there's the skeptic's case. While his followers grew, so did his opposition. And skeptics argue that Cayce may have absorbed medical terminology from overheard conversations, newspapers, or books, but he demonstrated knowledge he could not have access due to limited literacy. This guy had an 8th grade education. Witnesses controlled his access to materials. Many technical terms he used did not appear in his environment. Then there were the cold readings. Cayce never saw the patients. He was unconscious during the readings. Cold reading was impossible. Then there was coincidence. Some predictions were vague or failed, but thousands of medical diagnoses were specific and verifiable. Many lifestyle remedies were decades ahead of their times. And lastly, there's myth-making. The metaphysical materials, Atlantis, reincarnation, etc., was unverifiable, but the consistency of the metaphysical system was astonishing. Cayce never studied such subjects. Skeptics could dismiss parts of the story, they could challenge his accuracy, they could debate metaphysics, but they couldn't erase the archive. Thousands of pages, dozens of witnesses, 40 years of documentation. Something happened. What it was remained the question. Today, Cayce lives in a strange middle space. Too accurate to dismiss, too mystical to accept, too documented to ignore, too inconsistent to canonize. Modern scholars examine him through multiple interpretations. 1. A dissociative phenomena. Edgar may have reached a state of consciousness that ascended latent knowledge or subconscious completion. 2. A form of psychic intuition. Some believe he tapped into remote viewing, clairvoyance, or anomalous contagion. 3. A spiritual mediumship. He may have accessed non-physical sources, guides, collective unconscious, or soul records. 4. A cultural mirror. Cayce's readings may reflect humanity's deepest hopes, fears, and mythologies. 5. A genuine anomaly. The simplest explanation for his accuracy might be the most controversial. He really could do what he claimed. Every generation revisits Cayce, every generation debates him, and every generation finds something new. Here we are. We're doing the same thing. Even now, Edgar Cayce remains the most documented psychic in American history, a foundational figure in New Age spirituality, a pioneer in holistic healing, a source of inspiration for countless researchers, and a mystery that refuses to die. Straight up. ARE still operates in Virginia Beach. Visitors study his readings. Doctors review his medical advice. Archaeologists debate his claims, and spiritual seekers trace their philosophies back to him. Cayce has outlived every critic, every skeptic, and every era he was supposed to fade in. He lives on in the archive left behind. And Cayce forces the question no one in science or religion answers well. Is consciousness bigger than we think? His life suggests possibilities. That the mind can reach beyond the body. That illness may have spiritual roots. That history may be older than textbooks say. That the soul may move through multiple lives. That reality may be layered with unseen dimensions. And that ordinary people may possess extraordinary abilities. But he also embodied a darker truth. Great gifts can destroy the people who carry them. Cayce healed thousands of people, but he could not heal himself. He saved many lives, but his compassion cost him his own. He offered clarity to others while drowning in uncertainty, and he brought light into a world while burning himself out. That contradiction, human and divine, gifted and burdened, a healer and sufferer, is what makes Edgar Cayce endure. So if you stand today at his grave in Hopkinsville, the stone is simple. No claims of prophecy, no mention of Atlantis, no reference of miracles, just a name, a date, a quiet legacy resting under earth. But that simplicity is deceptive, because Edgar Cayce wasn't a prophet carved in stone. He was a man torn between faith and fate. A man who tried to live humbly while speaking truths he didn't understand. A man who wanted a normal life, but ended up shaping the beliefs of millions. And every time he slept, something ancient and mysterious woke up. Tiny little round of applause for Edgar Cayce, everybody. We've come to the end. We've come to the end of Act 5. And now that we know the story, we know everything that happened, we get to decide, is this really paranormal? Oh yeah, thanks, Confusion. Yeah, what's going on? How you doing? I saw you came in, but I was on a run. I was going. The emotion was pouring through me. This is a really cool story. I read the full book, the Edgar Cayce, Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet. That's why we named today's episode after the book. It's a really sad book. I'm not going to lie, I felt really emotional at the end of it. But if any of you watching YouTube, Twitch, wherever you guys are watching or listening from, go out and get the book. Like, I would recommend buying it and just keeping it nearby and reading it when you can. It's a fantastically thick book. Several thousand pages. But it's such an interesting book, and it really dives into so much more detail than we were able to cover on this episode tonight. We're left with one question. Is this paranormal? Now, I've said it before, I'm not a Christian. I have a very specific world belief, a spiritual belief. I believe in egg theory. that does follow reincarnation, so that is kind of in tangent with what we're dealing with today. I can't help but feel like a kinship with the story, right? However, a lot of this guy's predictions have come true. He was able to help strangers hundreds of miles away just reading a letter while he was in a hypnosis state, right? How do you justify it? How do you explain it? And I think the point is that you can't. Because some of the greatest gifts in life are given to those who don't want it. You know, let's do the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that rings true in this story precisely. I do believe that Edgar Cayce was given an amazing gift, okay? I don't know where this gift came from. And personally, I do believe that he did tap into the Akashic record. And when you look at the caliber of the man he was, right? This man was poor his entire life. What do we do in this podcast when we're doing an investigation? We're going to ask the first and foremost, we're going to ask the question, who's making money off of this? Edgar Cayce did not make money off of this. In fact, he often refused payment. Because you're talking about people that were living through the Great Depression. 1800s. Early 1900s. Dude lived until 1945. How hard was life from 1945 back into the late 1800s? Excuse me. When was was he alive during the Dust Bowl? Was that part of it? Let's find out. He lived through the Dust Bowl. So 1930 to 1940 was the Dust Bowl. He lived through the Dust Bowl, and that was one of the single hardest parts of American culture. So you know how, specifically people in the United States here, you know how when you put your cups in your cupboard after, you wash your dishes, you set them out to dry. They're dry, time to put them up. You know how you put them in your cupboard upside down? You know why you do that? Because of the Dust Bowl. Because the Dust Bowl is precisely what you think it is. This was a time during American culture when we were going through a massive drought. We did not have irrigation like we do today. And millions of acres of farmland in the United States were nothing but dust. Wind would pick up and you would have airborne dust that would kill people. So much dust in the air, it was killing people. And you know how you keep dust out of bowls and cups? You store them in a cabinet upside down. Ooh, okay. There's a little something for you right there. So you see, the Dust Bowl happened in the 1930s, and we're still doing things that we did back then. That's how big of an impact it made on the American culture. And I would be willing to wager that it spread worldwide. I'm just curious if people overseas do the same thing. When you store your cups in your cupboard, do you store them upside down or right side up? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to know. Tell me all about it. This man lived through the Dust Bowl. He lived through World War II. And you know what he never did? He never asked for money. For starters, incredible caliber of a human being. Personally, I do this podcast for the love of it. I don't make money off of it. To be clear, I am not aligning myself with Edgar Cayce. I am nowhere near the man that he was. He was a great man. And he did great things, and he helped thousands upon thousands of people. But there's a lingering question, and we said this earlier. I think it was in Act 2 or Act 3. If he could diagnose people, he diagnosed himself. Why didn't he heal himself? His wife died 3 months after him. Why didn't he foresee that coming? Why didn't he predict 9/11? Why didn't he predict the Oklahoma City bombing? Why didn't he predict the AIDS pandemic? Why didn't he predict COVID? Wait, let's look it up. Did he predict COVID? No. No, he did not. Yeah, so, like, why didn't he predict COVID? Like, it impacted the entire planet. Everybody was impacted by COVID. How did that not come up on his radar? Understandably, sure, he was dealing with a question and answer basis. But, I mean, sure, like y'all listening, surely you get it, right? There's so many things that happened between 1945 and today. Why didn't we predict it? Things that could have saved millions of lives. Hundreds, thousands of lives. Predict it. But I don't know. He predicted his own death, but he did nothing to prevent it? Okay, let me be the pessimist here. He didn't do anything to prevent it. He was literally told, rest until New Year's. Look, somebody tells me to sit and rest until New Year's. I'm going to sit my ass down. I'll find something to do. Right? I say it all the time. When COVID hit and they told us to lock down, don't go anywhere. Shit. You know what I did? I played video games for 9 months. I had no problems with COVID. If somebody were to tell me from an existence, a consciousness way above me, like Edgar Cayce was dealing with, you're going to die unless you relax until New Year's. You know what I would do? I'd sit my ass down. This is the only flaw in the story I'm seeing. If he wanted so bad to help people, why didn't he do what he could to preserve his own life as long as he could? To help people as long as he could, right? But I get it. He wanted to help people more than he wanted to help himself. And that's what the selflessness comes into play. Let's look at the facts. The man...
Prob's just well tired.
Right, yeah, he literally worked himself to death. But let's look at the facts here. He helped thousands upon thousands of people. Thousands of people. More than anybody today can claim, right? I could only imagine if Edgar Cayce were alive today and he were doing readings, how he would be perceived. Probably nobody would give him any thought. But it begs the question.
11 raiders from Soya Soy Sauce
Whoa.
have joined.
Oh my gosh. We got raiders, everybody. We got raiders. Soya, what's going on? How was pressure washing? So glad all of you raiders are here. So glad indeed. Let's get another round of applause. Soya, you get a lit liquor. Here you go. This is for you, Soya.
We have come to joke in your void.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lit liquor?
Welcome, friends. Welcome to the world of worlds of confusion. Yeah. See what he did there? We took Worlds of Confusion's name and we turned it into like a joke pun thing and made it kind of awkward. Like a joke. But...
H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A, hell yeah, thank Y-O-U.
There you go. Let's blow off some sound effects.
M-O-N-I-M-O-N-I-M-O-N-I. At Moni_moo_carrot.
What else we got? Let's kill our spooky sounds. Let's see what other sounds we get that we can throw out there.
Aliens. Omigo Arsh, look at this scene. It looks sick, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've worked very hard on all of this. Did a major rebranding season 2. Season 3, we're going to get another change up. We got some more stuff coming. Reworking. So I'm going to say this. I'm very excited about this. I'm doing a scene for scene remake for season 3 of the X-Files intro. Okay? So it's going to be like if you can watch the intro for season 3 side by side to the X-Files intro, it will be the same kind of shots, but relevant to this podcast. I've been shooting video. I made a new song for the intro. But we've got so much stuff lined up for season 3. I'm very, very excited. Because we've been doing all of this. We redid the entire studio. We redid all of the interface. Everything has changed in the last 6 months. We worked very hard on this. But we'll see what happens. Thank you, all of you raiders. I'm glad you're all here. Shoot. Let's see. Do I remember how to do a shout out? I don't remember how to do a shout out. What is it? SO/SO? No, SO exclamation point? I don't remember. It's been so long. I very rarely get anybody in here. Let's see if I can do this right.
So, Sawyer_soy_sauce.
I failed horribly. let me look it up right quick. Shame on me. I should know what this is. I really should. I should know what this is. Absolute shame on me. Yeah, sorry. I may or may not have been having some drinks tonight, okay?
That activated ads for me.
Did it really? Oh my gosh. So sorry. Commands. Here we go. Oh, I did it backward.
I was very unsure of my so commands earlier too. I feel you. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A same M-O-N.
Hold on. Here we go. We're almost there. What is it doing that for? It's doing something funny. Oh, yeah. I should probably not do this and drink at the same time. Oh, the text is so small. Hold on. Almost there. Why is it? It's pasting it in a funny place.
Well, that was fun. Go check out Sawyer_soy_sauce at twitch.tv/Sawyer_soy_sauce and go show them some love.
Yeah, that's right. That's how it's done. There you go. You get
H-A-H-A-H-A, there it is. Tings for shouting. You did it.
Thank you so much. I've had like 3-4 of these.
Hangration.
They're very strong. 9.5%. You guys came in at the right time, and I'm thoroughly faded. But that's okay. I had
Coagulation.
Coagulation. I'm glad you're all here. Yeah, so we discussed Edgar Cayce tonight. Does anybody in chat know about Edgar Cayce? He's considered the sleeping prophet. He would go into his trance state, and he would figure out ways to heal people while he's in a trance state. And this was back like early 1900s, like 1910s and 20s. And he would accurately be able to predict what is wrong with people hundreds of miles away and tell them how to fix their medical ailments with an 8th grade education while in a trance state. Edgar Cayce is...
OOH, that GUI.
Yeah, that guy. So we ran through his whole life, and I did not know that his main facility that he set up as like an enduring legacy is an hour and a half away from me. I had no clue. So the next time I go that way, I'm going to make sure I at least stop at the doors and run up and take a selfie or something. I wish he were buried here. I'd go and see his gravesite and, bring the man some flowers or something. But he's buried way off in, where was he born? He was buried where he was born. Way off in the sticks, I think. Kentucky. He was buried in Kentucky, so that's not going to happen. I'm not going to go visit Kentucky, but an hour and a half away, I can do that. I go that way sometimes. But he's made some very accurate predictions. He predicted the end and the start of World War II. He predicted the Great Depression in the United States. He predicted his own death and funeral dates. And sadly, he was able to predict that his death was coming before he was, like horribly ill, but he refused to do anything about it. And, he decided to help people instead of worrying about himself, because the more he made these predictions and the more he helped people heal themselves, the more it took a toll on him. And as a result, in the end, it killed him. So the man was truly selfless. I say again, round of applause for Edgar Cayce. A truly selfless man that his whole life, all he wanted to do was help people. He took no money for his readings, ever. He's a good man. Manamu, I see you joined. I'm sorry. How you doing?
Yeah, people forget to refill their cups.
Well, we've come to the end of it. You guys have popped in right at the end, and all we have left is a little tiny paragraph to read. Yeah. But he was a good man. He was as good of a man as most of us could ever aspire to be. I can only hope that maybe by proxy, some point in time in my life, I could help people the way that he had helped people. My life is a drop in a bucket compared to that geyser of a helping soul. It's very interesting. He was a very conservative Christian type, but he predicted and spoke about the Akashic Record, about reincarnation, about past lives, about Atlantis of all things. And he predicted the discovery of the Bimini Road. That was discovered in like 1990 something or other, like 30, 40 years before he even died. And he said the Bimini Road would lead to Atlantis. However, we followed the Bimini Road as far as we could. We don't see Atlantis down there.
Sup?
Gids, how you doing? Wow, everybody's here tonight. Thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight. Y'all are amazing. Yeah. Should we have another cold beverage over on stream? One more cold beverage? There we go. Yeah, one more. Why not one more? Yeah, the people watching are dropping like flies. That's okay. We'll have one more for the road. So, if anybody watching tonight wants to catch next week's
Bevies
episode...
up. Just been in a work meeting. Give me a min to sort my shit out.
Oh, kids, do your thing. No pressure. This is pressure-free zone. This is friend zone. Yeah, that's for you, Manamu. There you go with a, what is it, 9.5%. This little sucker's strong. I've had 3 of these tonight. Any hoots. If any of you all want to come in next week, we're going to be live next Saturday instead of next Sunday. Don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure something out. I will be out of town on Sunday next week, so we will not be live next Sunday like I usually am. So same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but Saturday, not Sunday. I welcome you all with open arms. With arms wide open. Yeah, that horrible Creed song. I don't have that sound clip. I don't really have very many sound clips.
I'm not saying it's space aliens, right? But it goes without saying it's fucking space aliens.
But yeah, we're going to be live next Saturday, and we will do our podcast then. We'll upload everything and do all our business then. So I look forward to seeing all of you there. Homework. That's your homework for the week. Be here next Saturday. I moved the camera. Oh, Lord, I moved the camera. There we go. That'll work. That'll work for now. So yeah, if y'all want to be here next Saturday, we'll be here live. Maybe we'll have a little bit of fun. There's no telling what we're going to talk about. Probably something, I said this last week, but very possible we've done so much high strangeness lately that I think it's time that we do, I don't know, what do you guys think? A cryptid? Is a cryptid feel good?
The day I enter the new dimension of 40.
Oh no. Yeah. I did that 2.5 months ago. Boof. Don't remind me. Brr. I don't feel good about it.
Hell yeah, cryptid.
Cryptid? All right, we'll do a cryptid next week. Let's put it on the board. We'll do cryptid next week. I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll figure something out. I usually say, let's not cover the Mothman because it has been beat to death, but you know what? I live in Virginia. What do you say we do the Mothman next week?
Something sexy.
Oh, the Mothman, for sure. Have you seen the statue of Mothman? Have you seen the statue of Mothman? Oh
Yes.
my! You seen the cake this guy's working with? You seen this cake?
I've seen caked up Mothman.
Aliens.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
Have you seen this cake? All right. What do you say next week we do Mothman? It has been kind of my rule not to do the ones that have been beat to death. That's why we haven't talked about, like, Bigfoot. That's why we haven't really talked about Mothman. But you know what? In honor of Manamu seeing the cake, and so you're rating me tonight.
Is it wrong that a Catboy Mothman tattoo?
Catboy Mothman? What? What are you talking about? What are you talking
I
about?
want to. I'm
Oh.
pootling around doing bedtime things, and I must say Mothman cake brings me joy.
Should we zoom in a little more in this? Fill the screen. There you go. Here we go. We're gonna end, we're gonna end the podcast on this. Dude is caked up. Pickles of Snickers. Jeez, them cheeks though. Is he clenching? I don't know. I feel like he's clenching. Yeah, he might be. Like, who has ever really
What's
seen...
that? Sexy Mothman?
Yes. We're gonna do Mothman next week. We're gonna cover Sexy Mothman next week. A dude's rocking like a 12-pack. Check this guy out. Yeah, look at this. Dude's got a 6-pack for days. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. Look at that hamburger on the chest. 6-pack. Cheeks.
I am sort of unsurprised that Sexy Mothman is already an established meme.
Checks all the boxes, friends. Checks all the boxes. You know what? Let's do it. While I'm feeling
I'm very
spunky.
unsurprised, Gids. The internet is such a hole in it, lol.
Like, dude's got no neck, and like early 80s to mid 80s Burt Reynolds chest hair. Burt Reynolds, is that right? Yeah.
No neck, all cake.
Did they model Mothman off of Burt Reynolds? Do you see the similarities? I do. Look at the cigarette, the little curved cigarette. This is a total Cowboy Bebop moment. Dude's got a crooked,
Oh my god.
a little crooked cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Oh,
I think they
jeez.
did.
Let's see what type of embarrassing photos we can find of
Smash
Burt.
or pass, though.
Oh my gosh. This is going to get me banned. I know it is. There you go. That's for you, Soya. I'm going to pass. Too much hair. That's all you, Soya. That's all you. This is definitely like a centerfold from something.
Hot dang.
Oh, geez, my algorithm will be forever screwed up from this point forward. Yeah, like...
Put
this...
a Mothman head on him with red glowing eyes and I'm sold. You should just image search, Sexy Mothman, you coward.
Oh,
H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H, no thank Y-O-U.
okay. I'm going to search it, but I'm going to do it off screen. Oh, my Lord. What has my life become? What has my life become? Well, there's your sexy Mothman. Oh, there's so many. Oh, geez. There's a Mothman wearing a thong. Oh, geez. It's a sticker. Oh, lordy. Do with that as you will.
This has actually been a thing for years now.
I am unfortunately very aware of it.
I love this.
This is all you.
M-K-A-A-Y. R-O-G-O-D.
This is all you kids. This is all you. This is what you wanted.
I'm asleep good tonight, I tell you, HWUT.
Oh my gosh. Had to be upside down, didn't he? Jeez. Sexy Mothman.
I don't know that I wanted this, specifically.
You asked for it, but you got it.
Hahahagids. I didn't invoke the Mothman here.
Here we go. Yeah, draw me like one of your Mothman. Do it, Jack. No, it's good stuff. I'm not upset. This is fun. This is good fun. There you go, kids. Just bought a new car. Maybe this is the sticker I need. I don't know. Jeez. All right. We'll zoom into these cheeks. Let y'all see this cake. Oh gosh. Where to bring my script over here? We've come down. So, folks, we got to wrap it up. We're half hour past. Oh, jeez. Thank you all for being here. I really am. I'm grateful for every single one of you. Thank you, Soya, for the raid. Thank you for all you guys watching on YouTube tonight.
Go damn ads.
Boo. We'll wait. We'll wait for ads. Let me make sure. I'm going to let them know. Hard to type when you've been drinking. Wow.
Let me know when ads are clear, friend.
Do not subscribe to this channel so you can be clear of the ads, people. This is wholly unimportant. This is just my hobby. You do not have to pay to watch this show. Oh, fantastic. All right. Cool. We're going to leave these Mothman butt cheeks up here. We're going to leave these Mothman cheeks up here while we wrap things up. We've come to the end. We haven't definitively said whether or not Edgar Cayce is paranormal. I don't think this is paranormal. I think Edgar Cayce was legitimately given a gift. I don't know where this gift was from.
There's a whole genre of Mothman in Shin Megami Tensei 5 memes.
Oh, gosh. Don't make me look that one up. I'll look it up. But I'm not going to do it on this screen. Oh, Lord. What am I going to see?
It's much more silly.
All
Less
right.
Sexy.
Well, here you go. Like somebody put the work in. Kudos. Somebody put the work in. I'm not upset. I'm not upset at all. This is good fun.
Okay, maybe a bit sexy LULU.
Yeah. Like a full character model. Good job. I'm going to stop scrolling. We got to wrap this up, folks. Thank you, Soya, for the raid. Let's get back in it. We haven't decided whether or not Edgar Cayce is really paranormal or not. We're going to say that Edgar Cayce is not paranormal because generally paranormal comes with a stigma that talks about the negative side of the paranormal, right? So when something paranormal is happening, like this right here, like these cheeks, like this cake, we tend to categorize that in a negative light. However, Edgar Cayce was the most wholesome person. Edgar Cayce would not tolerate these Mothman cheeks. Edgar Cayce would be a little upset by the Mothman cheeks. I'm going to say that perhaps, despite my religious beliefs, that Edgar Cayce may have been given this gift from a divine power. Through God as he understood him. He was given a gift reluctantly, and he helped people. He healed people. He predicted things, and not everything came true. Sure, I get it. But he helped thousands and thousands of people. What person today can say that they've helped that many people, aside from Mothman cheeks? All right. I truly believe that Edgar Cayce had some type of ability. Otherwise...
By the way.
Oh, I feel a sneeze coming. Hold on. I gotta mute.
There's a whole other meme about Mothman stealing your catalytic converter.
Yes, unfortunately, I've seen that one. That's a trend here where I live. And I have seen the meme.
It has way too much content.
I know, right? Jeez. So, I'm going to say that the story of Edgar Cayce, what he stands for, what he believed in, what he did, is not explicitly paranormal. However, there is something we can't explain. How was he able to do medical diagnoses on people hundreds of miles away that he had never met, accurately describe their medical conditions, and then tell how to cure them? Aside from being able to tap into the Akashic Record. I don't want to call the Akashic Record or the tapping into here therefore paranormal. That being said, I'm not going to say that the story and the case of Edgar Cayce is explicitly paranormal, but there's something there that we won't understand until we've reached that point of enlightenment, as each individual seems fit. Now, there are stories of people that at the right before the moment of death, they reach this moment of enlightenment where they truly understand everything. Maybe that's when most of us see it. Maybe something happened in Edgar Cayce where he was able to tap into that information and realize upon enlightenment that he's able to help people by tapping into the Akashic Record. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. I don't want to call this paranormal because it's shaded in a negative light. So I'm going to say that this is not paranormal, but not paranormal. So somewhere in between. I don't give that vote too often. This is something we can't quite explain. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to explain it. Not in our lifetimes. Maybe when we all pass, the moment will come up where we'll all understand completely. And at that point, it'll all make sense. But until then, we're left to wonder. So before we go, we have one closing monologue. We've got a little bit of paragraph to read. And again, if you don't want to catch this next week's episode, we're going to be live next Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have
anyone can access the Akashic Records.
Anyone. It's just, I may or may not have tried to tap into it years ago. Failed fantastically. It's not my time. I get it. Maybe one day. But until then, what other questions? So, again, next week, Saturday, not Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be here talking about Mothman. Easy subject. Come on in. Let's talk about these cheeks. We're going to talk about all these cheeks, all these six-packs. Be ready. Be ready. Before we go, we have one little tiny paragraph to read.
You need a good reason to.
I know I do.
And to believe it.
This is true. I have tried, and there was a time in my life where I firmly believed in the power of oneself, say, or for the lack of a better word. I believe that I could do out-of-body experiences. I feel like I started to have one many, many years ago. I had read so many books on the subject, and I wanted nothing more than to have an out-of-body experience. And I wanted to access the Akashic record, and I wanted to be able to well, I believed it, but I wanted to be able to access the information that my mind just can't grasp. I feel like I got close. My circumstances changed, and I was never able to fully put it together, sadly. But I agree with you. Yes, this is a thing that anybody can accomplish, but it comes with like spiritual training, for the lack of a better word. Don't be afraid to try. Yeah, I don't want to ramble too much because I don't want to run people off. Anywho, let's get into this closing monologue before we get out of here. All right. Let's switch tones right quick. So Edgar Cayce spent his entire life searching for answers he never claimed to possess. He didn't call himself a prophet, a healer, or a mystic. He didn't crave attention or build a kingdom around his name. He was a quiet man who believed the world was bigger than our senses, stranger than our textbooks, and more connected than we dare imagine. And maybe that's why his story still matters, because it forces us to confront the uncomfortability, possibly, that truth isn't always loud, that sometimes it whispers through ordinary people who carry extraordinary burdens. Whether Cayce accessed hidden rooms of his own mind or tapped into something cosmic, divine or ancient, the impact he left behind is undeniable. His readings continue to challenge skeptics, inspire believers, and remind us all that reality is far from settled. And in the end, perhaps that's Cayce's greatest legacy. Not the predictions, not the miracles, but the questions he leaves behind. What else might we be capable of if we dared to look deeper? So if you find yourself sleeping in your bed with a book under your pillow, and you wake up with intimate knowledge of that book, page numbers, paragraphs, sentences, don't be scared. Reach out, tap into that information. Look beyond that veil. Look beyond Mothman cheeks. But whatever you do, make sure you follow us. beyond the shadows. Good night, everybody. I'm gonna get out of here. Have a good night. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
A creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.